Hi, this is Laurie Mangold, and we're about to construct month 4. Hopefully you've watched the cutting video and you have all your pieces cut. And now we're going to work through the assembly of this block. I love this block. I think it's a cool looking block. It looks more complicated than it is, in my opinion. So again, you have your instructions and they go through step by step what you're going to do. And I'm doing the desert sage, so I'm going to flip to that page right now. And so the first thing that it tells you to do is to take your 2 by 3.5 inch sage and 2 by 3.5 inch. This color is, I'm trying to remember, Northern Waters, but you'll know your colors that you've cut. And you're going to sew them along the 2.5 inch sides. So this is the 2.5, this is the 3.5. And you're going to have 2 sets of these. Okay, like this, all right? So that's step 1. You're going to sew those together with a 1/4 inch seam, and I have you pressing towards the sage, okay? Step 2 is you're going to take the long piece, the 2.5 by 7, and you're going to sew a sage 2.5 inch, and each end of one of those. So you'll have these 2, then you'll have this made. That obviously should measure 12.5 inches because it's going to be sewn on here. These at this point measure, good question, I believe 5.5 inches is what they measure at this point. Okay, so we've got that done. Then we have to make our corner blocks here. And that's where our new skill comes in this month, called stitch and flip. Now we have 2 videos out there right now for stitch and flip. The stitch and flip, the way I've always taught it, is this, and I'm going to walk you through that. But there's also, we just posted a new video using the folded corner ruler that you can also pre-cut these corners to put them on. And I encourage you to watch that. It does require the purchase of a ruler, but it is a huge time saver. So when we do stitch and flip, we are going to take, these are 3-inch squares, and you're going to draw a line from one point to the other, okay? Then you're going to line this up in the corner so that the line goes from the top inside to the bottom outside, and you're going to stitch on that line. Now I recommend that you stitch one needle position on the inside of the line to give you a little room to make the corner. So that's what I've done. I have stitched this. Now when I go to press this, I don't want to just push it up and press, because I want to make sure it's square, that it remains square on the block. So what I like to do, and that's just because I'm type A, is I like to take this piece, I don't know where my other rulers are, but that's okay, I can guesstimate it, and I'm going to trim this one down to a 1/4 inch. But I'm going to leave the bottom one right now. And the reason I do that is so that I can bring this over, and I'm going to force this corner up to match the corner of the square underneath. And notice it's pulling a little bit, right? That's okay. I'm going to just take my iron and mash it down, and I'm going to make that seam work so that that corner is square. Okay? So you see that? That corner is good and square. I'm sorry. It's good and square. I have forced it to be square and absorbed anything in the seam I needed to absorb. Now this is your choice. If you want to, you can trim the square underneath away. I left this one on. With this color, it kind of gives it some darkness, but I'm going to go ahead and trim this one just so you can see what it looks like if I trim both of them away. Excuse my giant ruler, but I have misplaced my other rulers. So I'm going to put the 1/4 inch line on there. I'm going to take my rotary cutter, and now I can trim that away. And when I open that up, now you can see. So the big difference is this gives it a little shadowing, and it really depends on what's behind. If you've got something that you don't want shadowing through, you for sure want to trim away, especially when you have a light color on top, to trim away both. But I do it in 2 steps so I can be sure that when this is pressed, it leaves the square square. Okay? So you're gonna make 4 of these, and you're gonna put these stitch and flip squares in opposite corners. All right, so that's your next step. After you've made these, we need to come back and we're going to sew one of these units, which you can see right here. If you look right here, we're gonna sew this unit between these two. But there's a gotcha here. If you look, and don't look too close, but if you look, this corner should be matching this seam on each side. That's not always easy because you've got, if you look, you've got a diagonal seam here and you've got a straight seam here. And where it matches is a 1/4 inch in right here to a 1/4 inch in right here. You see those 2 areas? Now,
let me zoom in and do that again.
okay, so the match point, which is not obvious, is where I've drawn a 1/4 inch line here, and where that is at the seam, and I've drawn a 1/4 inch line here, it's gonna match at that seam right there on that edge. Now, I'm not suggesting you draw lines on all of your things. A lot of times if you just put it there and sew, it's magically going to match. But if you're having trouble having it match, this is one way you can do that. And once you've done that, I can put a pin right through that seam at the match point. Let me get it there. Perfect. And then I can bring it down here and stab that match point, and then I can put it down and I can line them up. And normally what I'll do is I'll take another pin and I'm just gonna hold it and slide it right there, that I know I've held it in place. And now I can sew that 1/4 inch seam, and let's see how accurate I am. And that will just get you close to your match point. Sometimes you can just put them together and sew, and a lot of times they're magically just going to match. A lot of times they're not, and you may need to work at it a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and do that so you can see. So this is always where I cross my fingers and go, did it match? And I open it up and look at that. You can see my ugly lines there, but look, the 2 of them are touching exactly. Can you see that? And that's what you're looking for. Okay? Now, what I would do is I've got this one is going to go like this to make this X, and then I would sew this one onto this side. That essentially is going to go not on the outside, Laurie, like this. Okay? And so you're going to match, you have to match this seam when you sew it on, and then when you sew this one on, you're going to have to match this one and match this one. And remember what I've always said, you want to pin your match points first and then work your way down. Now, if you don't want to, what I would suggest, if you're going to sew this on, rather than sewing the entire thing and then opening it up to see if you match, I would go ahead and sew about 3 inches here and 3 inches here, check, and I would baste it actually, and if everything's looking good, then just go ahead and flip it back over and sew the whole seam. But it's a really fun block this month, and it's relatively quick. It's the first time we've kind of had these funny match points where one's a diagonal and one's straight, and how do you line those up so you know they're going to magically kiss each other in the right places. Okay, so that's your block. This should measure about 12.5 inches, and I think you should have some fun making it.